Yo, what is going on, guys? Dr. Ethan Turner here with the Fantasy Headliners, and it's time for our Week 7 Injury Update Show. You guys know the drill. Every single week of the NFL season, I'm going to be going through all the matchups for the week, telling you about all the injuries that you need to know about for your fantasy team. And as always, this show is brought to you by our friends over at Fantrax. Make sure you're going over, downloading the Fantrax app. Let them know the Headliners sent you. Use the code Headliners. If you're into NCAA basketball, they even have fantasy for NCAA basketball. I could not believe that. But if it sounds like something that would interest you, make sure you're playing over at Fantrax. We appreciate them sponsoring the injury show, but let's get into it. Week 7 Injury Update Show. Let's go. All right, guys, luckily no moment of silence this week. Nobody got ruled out for the year due to injury. Love to see that. Don't want guys missing the entire year, but let's get into the accuracy recap from week 6. Every single week, I'm holding myself accountable. Here at the Headliners, we pride ourselves on being honest with you guys on when we hit, when we miss. We're going to celebrate those hits, but we are going to tell you guys that we're not perfect. We're trying to get better each and every week, just like you guys are watching these videos, trying to get better at fantasy. We're trying to get better as analysts. We're honest, and I hope you guys appreciate that. Throw me a like if you appreciate that we are honest with our hits and misses. I don't feel like very many injury analysts can say that they are, willing to put out there how many times they miss, because I think we're just a prideful bunch. So last week I was pretty solid, 89% on my in-out calls last week, 88% on the year. Want to get those numbers up to 90. That's what my goal is each and every year. I did have some misses, though. Nyheim Hines, Chris Olave, both guys with concussions. I did not expect them both to sit in week 6. They did, even though they were practicing, just didn't pass concussion protocol. If you look at my misses throughout the year, I bet half of them come on in-out calls from concussions. They're just really hard to predict. It's hard to say who's going to play, who's not with a concussion. Russell Gage did get cleared on Friday, even though he hadn't practiced at all last week prior to that. Despite him not practicing, did play only 3 half PPR points, so not really somebody that you were probably starting, but just know that I did technically miss that one as well. T. Higgins, throughout the week, I really thought the team was just going to sit him. I thought that he was, playing poorly, wasn't practicing really hardly at all. But he did end up played a pretty good snap percentage, but only 7.7 half PPR points. Good for wide receiver 41 on the week. We know that if I expect a player to sit and they end up playing, there's a high likelihood that they do not score over 10 fantasy points. We've seen it week after week after week. This week, it's T. Higgins. Should have sat him, even though he did technically play and played a bunch and got a decent target share too. Dawson Knox, another one, thought he was going to be a sit coming into Friday with the foot injury, but he did end up playing, finished as the tight end 10 with 11.2 half PPR points. Not a bad week for Dawson Knox. I said to sit him, even though I did expect him to play. Still only 5th on the team in targets with 3. So we know touchdowns are make or break with these tight ends. If he doesn't score that touchdown, you're going to wish you had sat him. But if you played him, good on you. I messed up on that one. But I did have some hits last week. I said to start Hunter Henry with Jonnu Smith hurt. He finished as the tight end 4 on the week in half PPR. Just a really solid week from Hunter Henry. He has been solid the last 2 weeks, so he might still be out there on some waiver wires. Take a look and see if you can get a decent starting tight end to stream the rest of the year. We got the Jags running backs. Kind of a hit and a miss here. I did expect a big week for the Jags running backs, and the team as a whole did really well on the ground. Robinson and Etienne were technically both top 30 running backs last week, accounted for 163 total yards between the two guys, but the big play came from JaMycal Hasty. He added another 57 yards and a touchdown. That touchdown would have been really nice to cap off Travis Etienne, who I think finished as the RB19 last week. So he would have been up in the top 12 running backs had he gotten that touchdown. JaMycal Hasty. My prize picks of the week last week, both of those hit. I said Taysom Hill and Jamar Chase both hitting the over last week on their props. Huge week for Jamar Chase, which I expected as well. Make sure that you're using the code Headliners when you go over to Prize Picks. Get that 100% match up to the first $100. Said to start Chris Godwin. Really solid start, 12.5 half PPR points, wide receiver 21 on the week. It wasn't like a huge boom week, but it was definitely good enough to be starting him. And I also said to start Harrison Butker, coming off a major injury. A lot of guys are going to be scared off of that. I knew that he was still going to be solid as soon as he was kicking again. 7th best kicker on the week. If you picked him up off waivers in the last 2 weeks, you're welcome, because I thought he was going to be able to come back and produce right away, and he did. All right, let's get into the matchups of the week. I know that there are 4 major teams on bye this week, so if you have a question on one of the teams that was on bye this week, let me know in the comments down below. I'm not going to spend a lot of times on teams that are on bye just because they're not playing, so we don't really care about what's happening with their players at this exact moment. We're more focusing on this week each and every week. So in week 7, you got the Bills, Rams, Vikings, and Eagles on bye. If there's really someone you want to know about from one of those teams, please let me know in the comments down below. But just know I'm not going to spend a lot of time on bye weeks just because we want to get you the content for this week. I will take a few seconds to talk about Saints at the Cardinals last night. Normally, I don't talk about Thursday night games because they've already happened, but it's just worth knowing that Marquise Brown did have a foot fracture, and he's going to miss about 6 weeks. They did place him on IR. It looks like the team is not expecting him back until after their bye week, so we're looking at like week 14 before we see him again, and just know that fractures in the foot can take a long time to heal. If it's me, I'm probably trying to move Marquise Brown as we get close to that return time. I just don't know if you can trust him to be a fantasy asset moving forward. I know that a lot of guys missed time and missed that game last night. If you really care about one of those guys, please let me know in the comments, and I will do my best to, get you guys updates for those players. But because it's already happened, I'm not going to spend a lot of time with it today. Moving on to the Browns and the Ravens. Browns definitely have a lot of defensive injuries. Nothing really going on the offensive side. Cornerback Denzel Ward's dealing with a concussion. Hasn't practiced yet. Missed week 6. Not expecting him to play. Myles Garrett is dealing with shoulder injury. Didn't practice Wednesday. Limited on Thursday. Garrett did have that shoulder x-rayed after he re-aggravated the injury that he had from the car accident he had a few weeks ago. The x-ray was negative. I expect him to continue playing through this, but it is something that I think is bothering him when he takes certain hits. His defensive line sidekick, I guess, Jadeveon Clowney, dealing with an ankle sprain. He was limited on Thursday. This is the first time that Clowney has practiced since week 5. There is optimism he's going to play, but he needs to be practicing on Friday for me to be confident that he will actually do that. Moving over to the Ravens, they have the opposite problem. Their offense is beat up right now. Wide receiver Rashad Bateman has been dealing with a foot sprain, returned to practice Wednesday and Thursday in a limited fashion. Hasn't practiced since this injury occurred nearly 3 weeks ago. So this is a good move for him in the right direction. I do think we see him return this week, but I'm having a really hard time throwing him into my lineups. I'm going to give it a week on Rashad Bateman. Running back J.K. Dobbins dealing with some knee tightness, left the game really disappointing in week 6. Really odd injury designation. Tightness doesn't really tell us a whole lot. It's probably a hamstring strain if I had to guess. But given how extensive his knee surgery was, this is the kind of thing we expected with J.K. Dobbins. He is going to deal with this type of thing coming off this injury all season. It's why Dobbins was near the top of my list of players that you should not be drafting that I put in our world famous Headliners draft guide. So make sure you're picking those up before the season, because if you're dealing with J.K. Dobbins' injury right now, just know this is something you could have avoided. It. But here we are. Just know I don't expect him to play this week. His backup, one of his backups, there's like 15 running backs on the Ravens, but Justice Hill has missed the last couple weeks with a hamstring strain. He's practicing in full again. I do expect him to return, but I think Kenyon Drake is kind of the running back to play in Baltimore if you want to go with a backup here for Dobbins. This one is the most concerning, though. Mark Andrews, tight end, dealing with a knee injury. Wednesday was listed as just a rest day, but then Andrews didn't practice on Thursday either. I'm going to be keeping an eye on this one heading into the weekend. Check out the live show Sunday. Check out the live show Saturday for any new updates on Mark Andrews. If he doesn't get some work in on Friday, I think he's going to be a game time decision, and it is more serious than I think the team is letting on. This is not just rest unless we see him practice in full on Friday. Moving on to the Bucs and the Panthers. Bucks have 2 injuries on the offensive side. Cameron Brate dealing with concussion/neck strain, officially listed with the neck strain despite some concern that he got a second concussion in 2 weeks. Hasn't practiced yet. I don't expect him to play this week. Julio Jones dealing with that PCL tear. Didn't practice Wednesday. Limited practice on Thursday, but just know Julio Jones is basically a game time decision every single week until he proves otherwise. I just don't trust him. I'm probably not starting him even if he does play. And I actually like this matchup for a guy like Julio Jones if he was 100% healthy, but he is not. So I'm just not trusting it for my fantasy team. Moving over to the Panthers, they've got a lot of trouble at quarterback. You got Baker Mayfield dealing with the high ankle sprain. Is expected to miss multiple weeks with this injury, but technically got a limited practice in on Thursday, so maybe he's a little far ahead. I still think he's out on Sunday, but it is worth knowing that he is getting some limited work in practice. Sam Darnold has been on IR all year. He's dealing with his own high ankle sprain. They designated him to return from IR, but he's already kind of been ruled out of starting. They expect to go with PJ Walker this week. So I doubt that we see Sam Darnold suit up in anything outside of like an emergency backup role. The Panthers, though, are dealing with a lot of injuries at the cornerback spot. Dante Jackson, CJ Henderson, and J.C. Horn all banged up this week. I think Tom Brady is looking for some revenge after the Steelers got a surprise win on him last week. Yo, go Steelers. My prize pick play of the week is coming here in this game, and I'm going to go with Mike Evans coming back from a down week. Bounce back game here, over 65.5 receiving yards on Prize Pick. For fun, I'm going to pair that with PJ Walker going under 155.5 passing yards in this game. Head on over to Prize Picks, use the code Headliners, get a deposit match up to $100, and get in on this action. I've hit on every single Prize Pick bet that I have made this year so far. So make sure you are making some money with us. Going on to the Falcons at the Bengals. Falcons only dealing with really one injury of note, and that's cornerback AJ Terrell. He's dealing with a thigh contusion, limited in practice, but he's pretty confident he's going to play through this issue. He's going to have a tough day against Ja'Marr Chase. Let's be honest. Ja'Marr Chase coming off his best week of the year. So far, any limitations to their top cornerbacks need to be noted, but the Bengals are dealing with some injuries as well. We know about T. Higgins dealing with the ankle sprain, primarily been a decoy the last 2 weeks when he's on the field. Good news is he's practicing in full again on Thursday. My confidence in his health is growing. He did get a solid amount of work in last week's game, just couldn't really turn it into fantasy points. I think we're going to see him even healthier this week. I'm okay with throwing him back in your lineup if you need some spots because of the bye weeks, the teams that are on bye. Ja'Marr Chase, though, dealing with a hip strain. This is new. Haven't really heard anything about it other than he's been limited in practice. Chase rarely shows up on injury reports, so it's worth knowing, but this is most likely precautionary. Unless I see something different, I still expect him to play, and I think if he's playing, you have to start him because he does have some league-winning weeks in him. We saw it last week. Moving over to the Cowboys and the Lions. Lions getting some good news here on the injury front. Wide receiver Amon-Ra St. Brown going with the ankle sprain. Was able to practice in full on Wednesday. Appears to be benefited the most from the bye week for the team. He was not healthy heading into the bye week. He says he's feeling a lot better now. Going to be a full go. I'm not overly concerned about putting him back in my lineups. I think if he's a full go, I'm probably starting him. Wide receiver Josh Reynolds is hurt. He's dealing with a knee sprain. Different type of injury than what Reynolds was dealing with prior to the bye week. So it doesn't look like he's practicing. If he doesn't practice on Friday, I expect him to sit this week. Another wide receiver injury here, DJ Chark, dealing with an ankle sprain. He's been seen in a walking boot at practice. He's not really close to coming back. So we got 2 wide receivers down and Amon-Ra St. Brown coming back. I like those odds for Amon-Ra being a start straight back from the injury. Running back DeAndre Swift, though, dealing with ankle and shoulder injuries prior to the bye. Missed 2 games prior to that bye week with the shoulder sprain. Good to see him starting off limited. I would have liked to see full, but limited practice is solid for him. I think he may play this week, but I'm really only starting him if I absolutely have to in fantasy. I just worry about re-injury with him. I know that soft tissue injuries are common in his injury profile. He's had these types of things creep up basically every year of his career since he got to college. So DeAndre Swift, we'll see what happens. I'm hoping for a big week, hoping he's healthy. We know that he doesn't need a ton of work to give you a solid fantasy day, but I'm having a hard time trusting. I'm not going to lie. Cowboys getting some good injury news as well. Dak Prescott coming off that thumb surgery in week 1 was medically cleared, is a full participant in practice. He's going to be a little bit rusty, but I like the matchup here in for a comeback game. I expect him to play and produce pretty solid QB2 numbers this week. I think you can start Dak Prescott with some confidence. Moving over to the Giants at the Jags. Giants really only have one guy I'm worried about, and that's Saquon Barkley, probably the only guy that's really important from fantasy perspective, but he's dealing with that shoulder sprain. He's been banged up the last couple weeks, limited in practice, but I don't think it's something that he's going to not be able to play through this week. So I'm okay with starting Saquon Barkley. You know that. And then the Jags have a couple wide receivers, that are dealing with just minor things. Marvin Jones dealing with a hamstring strain. He's been limited. Appears to be on track to play this week, but I don't know if I'm really starting him for fantasy. And then you got Jamal Agnew. He's dealing with a knee sprain, hasn't practiced at all. Doesn't look like he is playing. And side note, are the Giants going to go 6-1? Like every game they've played has been decided by 8 points or less. I really want to see a convincing win from this team before I trust them, but that's pretty impressive. So shout out to the Giants. Moving on to the Colts at the Titans. Good news for Colts and for fantasy owners. Jonathan Taylor is back practicing in full from his ankle sprain. Expect him to play this week, and he's got a pretty good matchup against the Titans. Titans really only dealing with one issue here, and that's inside linebacker Zach Cunningham, which also benefits Jonathan Taylor. Zach Cunningham doesn't look like he's on track to play this week, so Jonathan Taylor is going to be, basically running straight into a banged-up linebacker core for the Titans. The Colts are having a couple other injuries just worth knowing. Shaq Leonard coming back this week from his concussion/nose fracture. He's practicing in full, so really rough matchup for him to come right back into playing against Derrick Henry, but I don't envy him from that perspective, but he should be playing. Kwity Paye dealing with the ankle injury. He hasn't practiced yet. Does not appear like the lineman will be back for the Colts this week with this ankle injury. Moving over to the Packers at Washington, Aaron Rodgers dealing with that thumb injury. Second week that Rodgers has been limited with a thumb issue. Has not thrown for over 260 yards in a game yet this year. Aaron Rodgers, really disappointing from a fantasy perspective. Turns out that if you lose your best wide receiver, you're going to have a hard time throwing the ball. He lost a wide receiver this week as well. Randall Cobb, dealing with a high ankle sprain, is expected to miss about 2 to 6 weeks with that. Washington also has issues at the quarterback position. Carson Wentz dealing with a finger fracture, had surgery in the fracture on his throwing hand, is expected to miss about 4 to 6 weeks with this injury. Taylor Heinicke is set to start with Sam Howell backing him up. If Heinicke can't make it happen, I would like to see Sam Howell get a little bit of run here. He was pretty highly touted, even though he fell in the draft. I would like to see Sam Howell get a chance. We kind of know what Taylor Heinicke is. And then wide receiver Jahan Dotson has a hamstring strain he's been dealing with. Re-aggravated that injury in practice this week. Doesn't sound like it was a major setback, but I doubt he was on track to play this week anyway. Heading over to the Jets at the Broncos. Jets don't really have anything to worry about. The Broncos only really worried about the quarterback, and that's Russell Wilson. Hamstring strain. Now, has a lat strain. Now he has a hamstring strain. So 2 injuries for Russell Wilson. Continues to be banged up. And it's really shown in his play. Has not topped over 300 passing yards since week 1, which was probably the only week he was truly healthy. And he only has 1 game this year with more than 1 passing touchdown. Where are we riding to, Russ? Just mediocrity? Like, what is the deal with him and Let's Ride? We're not riding anywhere except for losing in fantasy. So I don't trust Russell Wilson. The Jets are playing really well. I would not be surprised if the Jets absolutely smack the Broncos around a little bit. Going over to the Texans at the Raiders. Texans don't really have anything to worry about. The Raiders do. Tight end Darren Waller dealing with a hamstring strain. Didn't practice Wednesday or Thursday. If I had to guess, not going to be playing on Sunday. So adjust accordingly to that. Hunter Renfrow, midweek downgrade to a DNP on Thursday with a hip injury after no designation on Wednesday. Don't love to see that. He's on track to miss this game as well. Did somebody say that Davante Adams was going to have 15 targets? Because I feel like that's definitely going to happen. Heading over to the Seahawks at the Chargers. Seahawks only have to deal with Tyler Lockett. Has a hamstring strain, hasn't practiced this week. I don't expect him to play. Big chance for DK Metcalf to go absolutely supernova in this game. The Chargers have a few guys on offense that we're worried about. Keenan Allen. It feels like every week I tell you about Keenan Allen. Limited on Wednesday and Thursday, so that's an improvement. He is practicing again after the setback a few weeks ago. But the team has a bye next week, and so I think they still sit Allen despite him practicing and shoot for a post-bye return. Really give him as much chance as possible. If you didn't know, I actually said that this was a possibility back when he re-injured it in practice. So I was giving you today's news like 4 weeks ago. So hopefully you've been watching these injury shows because that kind of stuff is useful for your fantasy team. Kicker Dustin Hopkins. Dealing with a hamstring strain, hasn't practiced yet. Don't expect him to play. Neither do I expect Josh Palmer or Darnold Parham to play. Both those guys dealing with concussions and haven't practiced yet, so it doesn't look like they're on pace to clear concussion protocol. Chiefs at the 49ers, the big game this week. Chiefs don't have a whole lot going on, but they do have a pretty major injury on the offensive line. Joe Thuney dealing with an ankle sprain. Normally I don't pay much attention to linemen, but Thuney is well regarded as one of the better interior offensive linemen in the league, so just know he's a little banged up. It looks like he still might play, but just know that he is not at 100%, but it doesn't really matter because the 49ers have tons of injuries on their defensive line specifically. Eric Armstead still isn't practicing. Doesn't look like he's close to returning. Nick Bosa has a groin strain. He was limited this week. Looks like he is returning this week. Good sign for the defense as a whole. When he's healthy, that defense is infinitely better. But they got a lot of problems, in the secondary with starting strong safety. I'm not even going to try to pronounce this. Hufanga, dealing with a concussion, hasn't practiced yet. Doesn't look like he's going to play. And then free safety Jimmy Ward has a broken left hand, is practicing with a club. Looks like he's going to be able to play with the club, but it's going to impact his ability to pick off deep passes. So do the Chiefs use that to their advantage? I would think so. I would think that's something that they're going to try to exploit. And the 49ers also have some issues on the offensive line. Both starting tackles are hurt this week. Mike McGlinchey's dealing with a calf strain. Trent Williams dealing with an ankle injury. Both of them are limited in practice. I expect them to play. But the Chiefs defense does look like a pretty solid streaming option if that's something you're into. Going on to my Steelers at the Dolphins. Quarterback Kenny Pickett's dealing with a concussion, full participant on Wednesday. Looks like he's going to be able to play. And then the secondary, we've been talking about it the last few weeks. They are banged up. Cornerbacks Cam Sutton and Akello Witherspoon, both dealing with hamstring strains. Minka Fitzpatrick actually missed last week with a knee injury. All of these guys are getting some practice time in, so it looks like the Steelers are getting a little bit healthy on the defensive end. We're still waiting for some more news on TJ Watt. He should be coming back here in the next few weeks as well. So they can keep stealing wins. I think they still could make a run at a very winnable division, hoping for the best for my Steelers. They're going up against the Dolphins and returning quarterback Tua Tagovailoa coming off that concussion. Not even listed on the injury report this week. A little surprising there. He is expected to make his return to the field only a few weeks after getting knocked unconscious, rushed to the ER. Man, I just hope he's had enough time to heal and isn't putting himself at risk. I am really worried about Tua's long-term health if he were to get a third concussion here, but as far as we know, he's playing. Moving on, last but not least, Monday Night Football, Bears at the Patriots. Bears don't really have much to talk about, but the Patriots are banged up on the offensive end. Mac Jones dealing with that high ankle sprain. Apparently looks better this week in practice, and I fully expects to play. The problem is that Bailey Zappe is really playing good football right now. Best game as a starter last week against the Browns, had 309 yards and 2 touchdowns, no picks. I think Jones could be active this week, but I would not be shocked if he is not the starter his first game back. They could use him more as an emergency backup and then work him in as the starter in practice next week. Running back Damian Harris dealing with a hamstring strain. He was a full participant in practice. I don't like the Patriots because I don't trust the Patriots, okay? And the thing is that when Damian Harris hurt his hamstring last week, we were told that this was going to be a month-long injury. That was the initial report. And now he's practicing in full. I don't know if I trust it. I don't buy it. I think he's going to play, but I don't know if he's going to. This seems like a trap to me. I still am trusting Rhamondre Stevenson this week, but if Harris is going to play, I don't know. I'm just kind of surprised by it, to be totally honest. If he doesn't play, I would like to file a complaint with the Patriots because they be pulling this crap on me all the time, and I don't like it. I don't think that they're playing around with Nelson Aguilar. He's dealing with a hamstring strain, hasn't practiced. He is unlikely to play. So that's it. Week 7 injury update in the books. So that is it, guys. Week 7 injury show in the books. Let me know if there's anybody I missed in the comments down below. Make sure you like and subscribe. Turn on the notifications for the fantasy headliners so you can get this injury update each and every week of the NFL season. I want to thank our sponsors once again over at Fantrax, over at Prize Picks. Use the code headliners at Manscaped. Get 20% off and free shipping from our boys over at Manscaped. But that's all I got for you guys this week. The Doc is out.